Howdy folks, welcome back to the BTN podcast. My name is Scuba. Monk is on the other side of the table.
What is happening?
Okay, that's a bit too enthusiastic.
I am high on caffeine right now.
You've had maybe 3 or 4 coffees just before this?
Yeah. I'm kind of buzzing.
Yeah,
As this is what heroin feels like. I've got... probably not, is it?
Yeah, you've got issues, man. You've got issues.
It's probably the opposite of this.
Yeah. So today we have a guest from Jack's Throwback Attack podcast. We have Jack Haywood. How are you doing, Jack?
I'm fine, thank you. Yourself?
It's weird, amazing. Craig has hopped up on coffee.
Yes.
And I've just had a Pepsi Max.
I don't understand how people can be addicted to coffee. It seems like really unhealthy. Because I've just had like 3.
Yeah.
And I'm already a bit like, wow, this is a bit crazy.
You're already actually annoying me.
Yes.
If I'm going
Yes.
to be honest.
I don't know how people could just constantly drink Starbucks. Oh well.
Amazing.
Right, carry on.
So yes, Jack Haywood from the Throwback Attack podcast. We should probably intro this a little bit by saying we had an idea a while back. The podcast kind of guests were getting a bit dry for a wee while. And I decided, after a bit of research, because I was looking into, I think it was puppeteers at the time I was looking into for random reasons, I don't know why. Like a late night Wikipedia search sometimes happens.
You
get into
fall down a rabbit hole.
Yeah, and then you end up looking at different puppeteers for different programs. Yeah. And we ended up I was looking at a Mopatop shop for some reason, and then like Wizardora and stuff like that. So like Mopatops was a program much later on, so we had like Wizardora and Mopatops in the shop. And so I was looking at like different guys that worked on that. It turns out Mopatop shop has a few people that worked on Labyrinth, the movie as well.
Okay.
Which is awesome. So then, just to take away from that, I had the idea, and then suggested this to Craig of like a retro podcast, maybe going through like old kids' TV programs, and sort of like talking to like directors, producers, the like puppeteers, all those kind of things. It turns out already somebody already does this.
Yes, we were too late.
We were way too late. But you also do a great job of this as well. Yeah. Like pretty much some of the stuff that I wanted to do, but you also like...
You do it properly.
We
would half-ass it.
Oh, thank you.
And you also have you also have a bit of a background of like being into like retro stuff as well, which we kind of are, but you... we've recorded a bit of a podcast on this before, but we spoke about the last time of you going to like Comic Cons dressed up. Could you go into that as well? Could you talk to us about that?
Yeah. So I've always been a bit nostalgic and always enjoyed looking back on what I liked watching when I was growing up. Especially during these very difficult times, things are a bit bleak sometimes, so it's always nice to look back on happy memories. I do the podcast, do the YouTube channel as well, which I'm sure we'll go on to in a bit more detail later on. And yes, Comic-Con, I had this crazy idea a few years ago. Because when you get to Comic-Con, the costumes are absolutely fantastic, and people do various superheroes and movie characters and TV characters, really well-known stuff. And I wanted to do something different. And I was sat there thinking, what could I do? What could I do for Comic-Con that would be different, but people would know it's, nothing too obscure. And I had the crazy idea of going as Neil Buchanan from Art Attack. I, believe it or not, already had a mock replica version of the jumper, which I bought for a fancy dress party some years ago. It's not a real one, it's just a replica that I bought online. And I made a giant pencil as well out of paper mache and cardboard, so really keeping in spirit with the show.
Yeah.
And I was on this Facebook group where people posted what they were going to do for the Comic-Con, and I shared my idea with a picture, and for about 3 or 4 days, people were messaging me, commenting, liking, saying, "I really must have a photo with you. That's the greatest idea ever." And I was really taken aback by it because, like, to me, it was just I'm wearing a jumper and carrying around a prop made out of cardboard, whereas some people spend hundreds of pounds on these elaborate costumes. But because it reminded people of their childhood and that, people were really excited by it. And when I went to the actual Comic-Con, it was quite surreal because all eyes seemed to be on me, it felt like, as I was walking around, like, at the stalls and stuff like that. I could just hear people whispering, "That guy's dressed like him off Heart Attack," and people kept stopping me for photographs as well, which I just wasn't used to, really. I even remember I actually travelled by train that day, and I didn't know what platform my train was, so I went up to this guy that was, doing the tickets, and I went, "Oh, what's the train to the NEC?" And he said something like, "It's platform 5, Neil," and which is quite funny. And I don't even look anything like Neil Buchanan, but just because I was, wearing the jumper and the pencil, people seem to like it. Amazing. And then the Comic-Con after that, I thought, well, I need to do another idea now. And the other show I was a big fan of, which Neil Buchanan also devised, was Zap, the program with the comic book. And there was about 4 or 5 characters in that show, so I couldn't do all of them, but I dressed up as Cuthbert Lily in a bright pink suit and the polka dot tie and spiked my hair up, and my friend very kindly agreed to go as Daisy Dares, and she wore the yellow and black costume that Daisy wore, and did her hair in pigtails, and I drew a version of the Zap comic to carry around, and once again that was really popular as well. And I was going to do some other ideas, but then COVID happened, but we'll see what happens, eventually when we can go back to Comic-Con.
Well, this is one of the things, like, you're going to a Comic-Con, and most people, there's probably about 10 or 12 people dressed as Iron Man, a couple of people dressed as Batman, like, people just, like, doing the basic stuff, we'll call it, the real basic stuff, right? And then you turn up, Neil Buchanan, sticky tape, PVA glue everywhere. It's awesome, just amazing. So who else would be allowed to host the Jack's Throwback Attack podcast than yourself? That's amazing.
Sorry, I didn't quite catch that last bit, sorry.
Like who else would be, like, the most perfect host for a podcast like Jack's Throwback Attack?
Oh, thank you.
Exactly, man. It's amazing. It's amazing.
What's amazing to me is the fact that nostalgia seems to sort of, what's the word? Seems to downplay everything else. Nostalgia seems to be like the top thing. People can see a really elaborate costume, but Neil Buchanan is more interesting to them because of nostalgia. I don't know what it is about nostalgia, but it seems to do something to a person where they just turn into that child again, and they just become enthused with everything that's magical about the world.
Yeah, absolutely. It does take you back to a more simpler time, and yet sometimes you don't realise you've forgotten these programmes. It's happened to me. I've seen something somewhere, maybe on YouTube or on a website, and I've gone, oh my God, I didn't realise I remember that. And it's always nice because, like I say, it just takes you back to a simpler time.
That is great.
I'm going to ask you a question that I don't expect you to know, but I want to ask just on the off chance that you happen to have seen this show.
You might
remember what it's called.
Jack might surprise you because I had a question last time.
That's what I'm hoping for.
Both the things I was asking.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping for because he's clearly looked into this for the podcast. So I'm hoping that he knows. There was a show that I think was on CITV, and it was big bears that all lived in the one house. There was one that was red, one that was black, one that was probably green, red, whatever. They were all different colours. And they used to get up to all kinds of mischief. Do you happen to remember this show?
I know exactly what show you're on about.
Oh my God.
A friend of mine asked exactly the same question a couple of months back. It was called Teddy Bears.
Teddy Bears, okay.
And the theme tune went something like Teddy Bear Train, teddy bear bus, something like that. It was a group of coloured teddy bears that all lived in a house, and it was human actors in suits, and
yes,
they had a pet dog. I seem to remember as well. Yeah, look it up, teddy bears.
I just looked up.
Yeah.
You've got it exactly perfect. That is exactly the thing. Oh my god, I'm so happy.
How long?
I've been looking for this for. I'm 27. 10 years?
Mm-hmm.
I've been looking for this for 10 years. I could not find it. I kept searching colourful bears CITV, and nothing came up. Yes. Sorry, I'm really enthusiastic, but I'm very happy that I found this now. I'm going to watch every episode. Probably be saddened because I'm not that age anymore, so it's not going to be as good. But
I think that's one of the issues is going back and looking at some of these programs, and you're just like, I'm obviously not going to enjoy it as the same thing as well.
Yeah,
it's bad.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
I'm so happy now.
No, my pleasure. And absolutely, when you watch back these old shows, sometimes it can also be a bit depressing because you realise how many years have passed since they were on, and how children that are watching television now will have absolutely no idea what these programs are.
Yeah.
I actually, the Art Attack costume has also been used at fancy dress parties, and one of my friends had a birthday party and I wore it, and they got a little daughter as well, and we both realised that they have absolutely no idea what Art Attack is, and that was just one of those moments like, oh my god,
that's incredible.
Oh dear.
There's something in our heads that we just assume that they keep repeating these shows constantly.
I would just assume they would still be there, but
they last for like a few seasons, and then they totally get rid of them for some reason. I don't know why, but they do.
I suppose it's just getting outdated.
Yeah, I mean, if you ask me what's on CBBC and CITV now, I'd struggle to tell you. I've got no idea.
Yeah. I think the next generation of Jack's Throwback Attack will be like... You got kids, Jack?
No, I haven't, no.
No. I was going to assume like someday, like right now, there's a kid watching, like... I can't even...
Give one example, that's kind of the issue.
But that'll be those kind of shows.
Even Blue Peter isn't on TV anymore.
Is that away as well?
You can't even say Blue Peter. Yeah, that's gone.
I think that's still on.
Is it still on? I'll be told it.
You're wrong, idiot.
I think it is.
I got a scientific fact.
I think it holds the record for being one of the longest running shows ever. I think that and Stutty have both been going for something like 60 years in total, something like that now.
Right.
60, 70 years.
Craig's going to double check that right and blow his own mind.
Oh.
I wanted to go back a bit about it and sort of talk about your childhood a little bit. What sort of programs you grew up on, and what sort of stuff you're watching?
Oh gosh, I'll try and keep it to just a few because I could happily talk about every single one.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah.
If I were to name a handful of programs, I'd say, I've already mentioned Zap and Art Attack. Those two were the two that I absolutely adored and was a big fan of. But aside from those, I enjoyed watching the likes of Bodger and Badger. I thought that was fantastic.
Classic, yeah.
How To was great. I loved watching Tots TV and Rosie and Jim and Jungle Run as well. The game show in the jungle set was great.
That's my thing.
Any kind of gunge-based game show like Get Your Own Back or something like that, I loved as well. And Chucklevision as well. Chuckle Brothers are legends, of course. Stuff like that, really. Like I say, I could go on forever, but off the top of my head, those are the few that I was a big fan of.
Can I ask? You don't need to answer this, but can I ask how old you are?
I am 20. I've just got it. When's this podcast going out?
It'll be
actually soon.
A week or two.
A week or two, yeah. I think it'll be.
Okay.
Actually, it'll be next week.
Okay, yeah. I'm 27.
Okay, you're the same age as me then.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. So that's, when you mentioned Jungle Run there, I was like, I'm a little bit before that. I'm like about 6 years older than you. So
yeah. So what was your thing then?
Yeah.
Because I'd imagine.
I remember like a lot of the same programs. There was like Jack, to be fair, has just done a podcast with this guy, And I was going to mention this a wee bit later on, that it was one of the programmes that I've always looked for, and I managed to catch it on one of your Megamix videos, which we'll get into soon. And it was... God, I had it up just 2 seconds ago. You've literally just put this podcast out as well. Tim Whitnell from...
Oh, yeah. Mikeangelo.
From Mikeangelo, yes. That was one of the TV shows that I remembered when I was younger, because of the guy walking up the wall, and then coming out like a cupboard and all that stuff. So that was like probably like the earliest thing that I remember. And things like Spats and stuff as well, the kind of fast food TV show, which you'll not remember.
Yeah, I don't remember any of this.
Nah. But those are sort of my time.
Mikeangelo. Sorry.
Sorry, go ahead.
Mikeangelo. I seem to remember some shows that were a little bit before my time as well, either through them being repeated or having some on VHS. With Mikeangelo, I actually still had a couple of episodes on VHS. So when that finished, in 2000, it ran for a lot longer than people remember. It ran for over a decade, that show did. I had a couple of episodes on video which I watched over and over again, and I always wanted, because if you remember, he always used to juggle a lot as well, and I always wanted to learn how to juggle, and all through my childhood I tried and couldn't do it. I can now, and when I spoke to Tim about Mikeangelo, we had such a good time chatting about it, and he was great. And the best thing about that, I thought, was because I record all these podcasts not at home, but at a studio for a radio station that I volunteer with, and I've been doing shows with them for many years. I gave him the telephone number to ring into the studio, but what I'd done is I'd accidentally given him the wrong number, because we've got about 3 or 4 different numbers for different parts of the building. So I sat there waiting for a call, and it wouldn't come through. And then somebody said, the telephone in the reception's ringing and somebody's asking for you. I said, oh, hang on, I've given him the wrong number. And he rang my mobile, because I give him a mobile just in case of any emergencies or if anything had changed. And I answered the phone, and on the other end was this very recognisable voice that just went, "Hello, it's Angelo here."
No way, that's amazing.
Which was amazing. And he went, "Do you know what? I haven't said that for about 20 years."
Because again, that gives them a lot of like, again, the same thing as giving you, like, they're reliving that thing as well.
Awesome. What channel was this?
CITV, am I right in saying that?
Yeah, it's CITV, yeah.
Yeah.
See, this might be the thing, because I watched CBBC more than...
Oh, see, you're a traitor here, I think.
Yeah. I'm the CBBC
club. I think Jack's a CITV man himself as well. Is that right?
Yeah. I did watch both, but it was definitely more CITV. Even to this day, this is going to sound sad. Even to this day, I can still remember the address and the telephone number.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you next. Also, give that a go.
Okay. I mean, this is the address and the telephone number around about the late 90s. It might have been different before or after. The address was CITV, PO Box 4000, Birmingham B1 2JL. And the telephone number was 090 11 10 50 10, because they always used to sing 090 11 10 50 10. We jump and jive when those phones come alive, or something like that, I remember. And
that is incredible, man.
At that point.
You know what's funny is when you said
at that point.
When you said the postcode, I was like, my God, I remember the postcode. That's crazy.
Yeah, CITV at that point came from Birmingham, which is where I'm originally from. So I guess it holds a special connection for me there as well. Mm-hmm. I've been past the building where it used to come from. I mean, they don't really make much there anymore apart from the news, but sometimes I've been past and thought, it's where CITV used to come from. All those stars came through these gates. You know?
Yeah. Mad. So, I wanted to get a bit into your sort of radio background and stuff. How long have you been doing radio and stuff?
Since I was 17, so this would be my 10th year. And it was something that I never really had thought about until then. It was just something I fell into as a hobby. I kind of, growing up, I'd changed from wanting to be a scientist, a cartoonist, a chef, and then one day, I'm trying to think now actually how it happened, because it was a while back. I just was finishing school and I wasn't sure what I wanted to do really, and it was coming to that time where you need to think about what you're going to do for college. So somebody said to me, well, you've got this interest in television and stuff. Well, why don't you do a media course? And I said, okay. So I went and did a media course. And part of that was obviously doing radio stuff. And I found I quite enjoyed it, actually. And then off the back of that, a friend of mine was working for this place called WCR. And he said, well, you can join as a volunteer if you want. And I said, all right. And I did. And I've been doing that now for 10 years. I present shows on there. I've done various bits of like production work, and it has led to me doing occasional paid pieces of radio work as well, which is nice. I don't work in media as such. It's mostly a hobby for me, which I'm absolutely fine with. It's something that keeps me busy, and especially during lockdown and everything, it keeps me from boredom, I suppose. Something nice to work on.
Definitely. What kind of show are you doing? Is it like a music orientated show or talk or?
Yes, and it's slightly nostalgia related. Okay. It's a show about the noughties. And I've been doing it 5 years now with a friend of mine. The show's called Acceptable in the Noughties. I seem to remember we were struggling for names, and we thought about the song Acceptable in the 80s by was it Calvin Harris?
Yeah.
And we just thought, we'll just call it Acceptable in the Noughties. And that was and at that point, because it was about 5 years ago we started it, there was no noughties decade programs. There's lots of 90s ones and 80s ones, and I guess so much time has to pass before something becomes retro. Yeah. But now you start to think, well, actually the 2000s began over 20 years ago, which is scary, and obviously finished more than 10 years ago. So every week we do an hour, and we just play a mix of songs from that decade. We play like a lot of the familiar stuff, but we also try and dig out ones that you've probably forgotten about as well. And that's pretty much the format of the show. I've been doing that for a few years, and then prior to that, I just used to be like what we call a cover presenter. I used to just be there when somebody couldn't make their own program or something like that, and stuff. Yeah, that's pretty much what I do.
Is the show available online?
Yes. If you go to mixcloud.com and type in Acceptable Noughties, which is 00S, or if you just type in Acceptable in the Noughties, you should be able to find it. It's on Mixcloud. And also the WCR FM website has like a catch-up service on it, which has like last month's worth of programs on. I haven't been on it recently due to not being able to get into the studio for obvious reasons, but the show has still been going, either with my co-host doing it on his own or myself. It's whoever's available or whoever's not isolating at the time.
Yeah, awesome, man. That's exactly my time period in music as well. So
yeah, there's also a situation. I just bit my mouth there. Oh,
first rule of podcasting is not biting your mouth.
Right, how do you bite the inside of your own mouth? Anyway, because you're a DJ, that's always been something for us, me and you, Stephen, to help with, because I remember some songs that were there when I was at high school, like Aya's Replay, and you're always looking for things that people might remember, and so I come up with the occasional gem.
I remember the sort of like early 2000s and stuff like that, and like a lot of the 90s stuff, which you'll have no idea about.
Yeah.
But it comes to like late noughties.
I can remember like the last 4 years.
Yeah.
That's like the peak of my knowledge.
That's where I start to sort of fade out, sort of thing. Awesome. So is it mainly sort of like, I'm assuming most of the pop music of that era that you're going through, like cheesy stuff and...
We do a mixture. We always try and play a bit of everything in every show. So we always have a bit of pop, a bit of indie, a bit of rock, a bit of rap, R&B. Both myself and the co-host, his name's Lyndon, we're big fans of classic dance and trance music. So he's a bit older than me. He's in his early 30s, so he's a bit more knowledgeable of it, but I like some of the stuff as well. We play a lot of that. We have a little feature in the middle as well called "What Were They Thinking," which is where we kind of shine a light on a song that we think is terrible. Yeah. It's not necessarily something that was cheesy, that was deliberately terrible, but something that everybody thought was great at the time. And you look back at it now and think, it was a bit rubbish. That's always funny to do. We try and keep it varied, and we also try and make sure we don't play the same song too frequently. We try and keep in mind not to play the same track more than 2 or 3 times a year over the course of a year. We try and keep a record. We write down everything that we've played and make sure not to play it again for a while. And like I say, we try and dig out some of the tracks that you'd completely forgotten about, as well as the big hits as well.
Is that around the time of like Alien Ant Farm? The Smooth Criminal cover and stuff like that?
I quite like Alien Ant Farm, actually. We've played that a few times.
I quite like Alien Ant Farm.
Yeah, so I was asking if that was like the time period of Alien Ant Farm, because I couldn't remember if that was 2000s or 90s.
They were definitely 2000s.
That was early 2000s, yeah. I could be really nerdy and say exactly which year, because the amount of times I've played the tracks and had to look it up for the research, I can kind of spout it off the top of my head now.
Could I guess 2001?
Yeah, 2001, and I think Movies was the year after. Those are the two that I remember.
I guess.
Yeah, we played those.
Happy.
Amazing. So you must have been doing the show for a while, and then so when did the idea actually come up to do the Throwback Attack podcast?
So as long as I've been on the internet, I've always been looking up various nostalgic things, like watching clips people have put on YouTube, or listening to other podcasts, or reading blogs. And I'd always wanted to do something myself, but I could never settle on an idea. I'd started quite a few blogs over the years. I'd do like a few posts and then forget about it and do something else. I'm quite bad at sticking to one idea. And then 2018 was when I decided to do the Throwback Attack podcast and stuff. Well, actually, it started out as a blog again, which I still run. I set up the blog. I thought, I'm really going to concentrate on this now, really going to work on it. Took me a while to think of a good name. Throwback Attack, it was just because of Art Attack. I thought, well, the word attack's quite good, and Jack kind of rhymes a bit, and throwback, so I'll put that together. And I set the blog up and started doing some blog posts, and then I thought, well, it would be really interesting to get some stories from people that had worked on the shows. And I was inspired by a book that I'd read a few years back. It's called The Legends of Kids TV. There are 2 different books, and those books are basically just full of anecdotes from children's TV stars, not just from the 90s, but going way back to the 60s. And the person who did the book, I'm friends with on Facebook, and I asked him, how did you do it? How did you get these people? And he said, well, all I did was just ask very nicely, just sent an email, and generally people were quite happy to talk about it. So that inspired me to give it a go, because I was always conscious of, who would want to talk to this randomer that they've never met about something that they did all these years ago. But I thought, well, I'll give it a go. And so I did a few little Q&A things on the blog. And then I thought, well, actually, I'd rather do something more recorded, because I feel like you can have more of a conversation, and you can go down tangents and stuff. Whenever you do like a written question and answer thing, it can sometimes be a bit rigid. I thought, well, I'll do that then. I thought I'd do that then. So I settled on the idea, and I thought, well, I'll give it a go, see what happens. And I decided to send out a few emails to a few people. And amazingly, all of them come back as yes. So I was really quite impressed by that. And the very first interview I did was with a guy called David Peachy, and he played Bernard in Bernard's Watch, which everybody watched at one point. It was a great show.
By the way, can I just interject here? That's a banner of a start as well.
Yes,
that's if you're going to start a Throwback Attack podcast, you get the guy from Bernard's Watch. That's the way to go right there. It's amazing.
Yes. I was quite amazed, really, that it worked out, because he doesn't work in telly anymore. Some of them don't. They did it for a bit and moved on to other things. And he is now a GP, a doctor. So he doesn't do any telly work anymore. Has been out the limelight for a long time. So you're never sure if people will want to do it. But he agreed to, and we had a good time chatting about Bernard's Watch. And then I did a few others, and the guys off How To, and Richard O'Brien as well, which was amazing, because that was the only person that I've interviewed on the podcast so far that we did it face to face. It was his idea. He doesn't live in the UK anymore, so I knew that we'd have to try and do like a Skype call or something. And when I emailed his agent, they said, actually, he's going to be back in the UK soon, so message back closer to the time. So I did, and thought, maybe we'll be able to do a phone call or something. And I said, well, actually, why don't you go down and chat with him? And I was like, I had to reread the email 3 times. I couldn't quite believe what I was reading. So I said, absolutely, yes. So I travelled down to London and spoke to him, and he was very lovely. And then it's kind of snowballed from there, really. Did series 2, interviewed quite a lot of nice people in that series. And now I'm on series 3, which is halfway through now. So I've done about 20 episodes, I think. And I've still got a couple more to go out. And then I hope to do another series maybe later this year. Mm-hmm. And then see what happens after that. I've always been conscious that eventually I'll run out of people. So I try and keep it quite short. I only do about 7 or 8 episodes a year and put them out once a month, so that it doesn't run out too fast and keeps the momentum going. Yeah. But yeah, it's been good fun.
I think
I've been racking my brains that whole time. Richard O'Brien's the older guy,
Crystal Maze
from Crystal Maze, the bald guy.
The bald guy, aye.
Oh, is that who that is?
Aye.
I was thinking it was the old guy for How To. I don't know why.
That's Fred Dunninage.
Oh,
right.
Also split Fred Dunninage as well.
Oh, okay, right.
Yeah,
I'm getting my nostalgias mixed up.
Richard O'Brien's also been in the Rocky Horror Picture Show. He played the wee bald guy in that as well.
Oh, the butler guy.
Aye. He was in that.
Was that him?
Aye.
Huh.
He created it. He wrote it.
Oh, he wrote that.
Yeah. It was his play. In the podcast, I did talk to him about that as well, because I'm a fan of Rocky Horror too. Mm-hmm. And he said about how he wrote it thinking it would only last for 3 weeks. Mm-hmm. And that was in 1973, and it's still going to this day. So fantastic stuff.
I'm seeing the original star, Tim Curry, one of the biggest actors in the world.
Yeah,
crazy.
Damn.
Yeah.
You would never think that you've just wrote something that you're expecting a little bit of money from, and then it's like, oh, it's been 50 years now, and I'm still counting it.
Crazy.
It's amazing. So, is there a specific age range that you're going for? Like, I don't know how to explain this.
Well, like most podcasters and like anybody that's sort of trying to run a business in any sort of way, shape, or form, you would sort of go around. Like, we are very similar in the sense that we don't really have a sort of age range reach, because we
what I mean is.
Oh no, you and someone else.
For the people that you're interviewing, I don't know how to explain that. This is going to be really messy, so apologies in advance. When you're interviewing people, are you looking for people that you watched when you were a specific age, or is it just anything that you remember as interesting and nostalgic?
The way I look at it is it is very much the 90s up until about the mid 2000s, because that's what I grew up watching.
Right.
And a lot of the people who've been on it are people who I watched a lot of. I do sometimes have somebody on that may have done programs I didn't watch, because I'm always conscious that at the end of the day, it's not always about me, it's about the people who are listening to it. And that I don't tend to stray too far out of that time zone though, because if I'm interviewing somebody and I've never watched the program, it really does show through that I'm struggling to think of what to say, or I haven't got a clue what they're going on about. So I always try and at least know something about it. But people do suggest people that they want me to talk to, and I'm always happy to hear suggestions. And if I can think of enough interesting stuff to talk about, then by all means. But yeah, it is pretty much focused on the 90s and the noughties.
So for me, like I occasionally watched things too long, like at the age where they weren't made for me, but because I was old enough when they started, I kind of just finished. So like Big Cook, Little Cook, I was a little bit too old to watch that, but it was just sort of when I was getting too old that it was on, I kind of just carried on watching it. So for me, interviewing them would be interesting because you've got the nostalgia bit, but they're also comedians. So there's like, and there's that crossover for a lot of things, like the guy that lived in the castle in Ballamore, Miles Jupp. He's a big comedian now, and back then he was in Ballamore. So there's always a crossover, and I cannot remember my point.
Just to add to that as well, one of the most amazing things is you'll find a lot of like the kids' TV presenters or like guys that present shows like Big Cook, Little Cook.
Yeah.
And again, Miles Jupp. There's a lot of comedians. Comedians are like rife through a lot of kids' TV, and especially at that point as well. And it still continues on to this day. It's amazing to see.
Yeah. And the one thing that's nice is sometimes people started out in children's television and then went on to much bigger things. And sometimes you think, well, did I want to talk about it? You know, they've done much more exciting stuff, much more lucrative stuff, but I'm going to be honest, every single time I've spoken to somebody, they are more than happy to reminisce about a certain program that they did 20, 25 years ago. It holds a lot of memories for them. And I think as well, it unlocks a lot of stuff that they've forgotten about, because sometimes I've asked questions or talked about a specific clip that I've seen and they've gone, I forgot I did that. And so that's nice. That brings a lot of joy to me that, you know, that they, I mean, at the end of the day, the whole point of me doing it is everybody to have a good time, everybody to enjoy it. And you know, if it brings happiness and comfort to people, and makes people remember stuff that they've forgotten about, then that's great. I like that.
What I think is, it seems sometimes, and this might just be from me watching it and not really having any background knowledge of filming and procedures and stuff like that, but it seems that a lot of the time it might just be less stressful than the more serious stuff they might be doing now. So like Miles Jupp might be doing stand-up comedy now, but he's got a much more serious job to do now. He's dealing with adult audiences who are a bit more, let's say, critical.
Ruthless,
yes. Although, saying that, kids are quite ruthless.
Kids cut, that's a bit of a double-edged sword sometimes, isn't it? Yeah.
But it seems that maybe doing kids' TV and things like that is a bit less stressful. It's just, we're here to enjoy ourselves and make kids happy, and that makes the scenario they're in much more fun and nice to be in.
Yeah, I guess that could be the case. Yeah. I don't know if you saw it, but over Christmas, Ant and Dec and Cat Deeley revisited SNTV Live. They did a documentary about it, you know, and Cat Deeley's like a big star in America now, and Ant and Dec, of course, are massive stars here. And they went back to their roots, and that program was fantastic. It brought back a lot of memories to me, and it was nice to see the response that it got on social media after. There was so much fondness for that program, and it was like, it was great. And there's nothing like that on telly now, and it's quite. I mean, there are Saturday morning shows on kids' TV. I don't watch any of them, obviously. I'm a bit too old for it, but there's nothing like SNTV on, and that was just brilliant. I love that, and it's scary to think again. It's been about 20 years since that was on.
I'll tell you how.
I mean, we're grown men, and we still regularly watch Wonky Donkey. Compilation.
I'll give you a fantastic idea, right? So this is like just to let people know how much this is ingrained in our brains. So Alexa, just like a few days ago, we were sort of checking out different ways that you could get Alexa to say certain things, and you said ask Alexa to rap.
Yeah.
And one of the things was I was like, okay, Alexa rap, and she wasn't rhyming. So I ended up getting to the point I shouted over, it's got to rhyme, like from the Wonky Donkey thing, and I was like,
yeah,
that's just stuck in my head from all those years.
Forever.
And, forever.
That's never going away.
Be there forever.
That's how impactful on your life Wonky Donkey was. Just raging at children.
Yeah.
Stop being an idiot. It's got to rhyme.
And I'm raging at Alexa at the point as well. Incredible, man. Incredible. So I wanted to,
you know what was also a good... Sorry, Now this is just a podcast of me going, oh, come on, I used to like... there was a Sunday morning TV show, again, you'll probably know the name of this, on CBBC, and it had a wee bear called Nev in it, and it was hosted by Fern
Cotton.
Cotton. Who's Fern Britton?
I remember the programme, but I don't remember
Reggie Yates and I think Barney was that was my favourite programme when I was, I don't know what age, 10 or whatever, I don't know. But they used to play games and stuff like that, and like online games.
Is it similar to SNTV?
Kind of. It was called Smile.
Yes. You can see this is
amazing.
Oh, it's amazing. Yeah.
I had the aardvark as well.
I get this all the time.
Puppet.
I get people all the time going, what was the name of this programme now? And most of the time I can get it. It annoys me if I don't, but most of the time I've been able to do it. I seem to have this encyclopedic memory of everything I watched 20 years ago. I don't know why, but it seems to have stuck. So, yeah, I get asked all the time by people.
Well, it's been very helpful today. I could say that.
But the podcast's not over. Our Marsden Craig's going to come out with another 2 before we finish.
The thing is, though, the thing about Smile was that this is the first time I'd ever seen this happen, and I don't watch kids' shows anymore, obviously, but I don't think it happens again. I don't think it has happened again. Where they used to play a game which was like Pac-Man, but it had a wee bear in it, and you used to play the game through the phone. So you would speak to the presenter, and then it would turn the thing, whichever way you went. I don't think I've seen that since. And that concept was cool to me, and that's why I liked that show. That's a fun fact.
I think I remember that, yeah.
Cool. They always failed. They were always rubbish.
Well, but was that not a communication issue, though? Because they would...
Possibly.
Because they would be difficult to hear over
and
the phone.
Delay.
And whoever's like trying to press the buttons for them.
There's also the delay as well, I would imagine.
An absolute nightmare of a game to give. So I wanted to talk about...
I know what you're talking about. The Aardvark thing. That was another show with Reggie Yates where he used to make... He used to live in a flat with... I think it was his mum or his auntie or whatever. And they used to make pizzas.
Yes, I remember that as well.
Is that the show you were talking about? Yes, it was. No, Stephen, sorry. I should clarify when I'm speaking. I should say your name, because otherwise it
would help. It would help. Because
I was pointing at Stephen, but you can't see us, so that didn't mean anything.
Yeah. That's fine.
Okay, so I wanted to talk to you about, and I think we covered this last time on the podcast that isn't going out, unfortunately, but dream guests. We spoke about could you talk about a bit about sort of dream guests? I'm going to assume Ant and Dec might be up there as well.
That would be nice. Yes, that would be cool. Dream guests. I did have like a top 3, but since doing the podcast, I've had 2 of them. One of them was Richard O'Brien, the other was Dave Benson Phillips, and they've both been on. The number 1 would be Neil Buchanan, of course, because of the the link with the show name to Art Attack, and the fact that I liked watching Art Attack and that would be great. Mm-hmm. I'd like to have Paul Chuckle on as well. That would be good. Trying to think as well. Richard Cadell would be good as well, who's been the guy who does Sooty. He's been doing that for the last 20-something years now, since taking over from Matthew Corbett. That would be nice. Those would be nice to talk to off the top of my head.
Again, Neil
if you were doing the show, Stephen, who would your top guest be?
Top guests?
Yeah.
Neil Buchanan. Me and Jack spoke about this the last time.
Oh, right,
that was my top guest, was Neil Buchanan. Again, due to the, he doesn't do a lot of interviews, so he's like a really exclusive guest.
Well, he's a hardcore rock star, so that's why.
Is he?
I've
never listened to his music. I'm assuming
rock band thing.
He's in a nice band. But again, that's just one of the top guys that I would have went for.
I think I would go for the guy who played Muppetop in Muppetop Shop. Because that's the thing that I mostly remember as a kid. Yeah. I used to rush home from school to watch Muppetop Shop. Mm-hmm. So that would probably be my thing.
It's always interesting to talk to people who did puppets or characters where they wore a suit, because you remember the character, but you don't necessarily know who did it. And I think it's nice for them to get that recognition. Yeah. And I think they're quite pleased about that. And also it's even more interesting when their natural speaking voice is nothing like the characters. And I always go, can you prove that you are this person by doing the voice? And they're always happy to. And it's always quite surreal to suddenly hear this voice that you remember so well from your childhood just come down the phone or through Skype or something. It's like, it really is you.
Well, I'm going to have to apologise in advance, but we are going to be interviewing Muppetop Shop guy at some point. I haven't asked. Okay. We're going. I've now made the decision.
You've just decided there.
I've just decided right now that we're going to jump in before Jack does it, and we're going to steal one character that he can't do yet. So that's my plan.
That's fine by me. I'm of this opinion because podcasts about nostalgia, I'm not the first person to do it. And I have listened to podcasts before where people interview various TV stars from childhood. And go for it. If anybody else wants to do their own spin on it, please, by all means, do it. Don't feel just because I am that you shouldn't. There's a guy who started doing a podcast about 90s and noughties nostalgia last year that I was a guest on, and I don't think he knew about my podcast. And I remember messaging him and saying, "Oh, you're doing the same thing as I am." And they were like, "Am I?" And I said, no, don't need to worry about it. It's nice to see somebody else doing it as well. And I offered to be a guest on the podcast. So awesome. I've got no problem with it at all. Go ahead.
Awesome. So I was just going through guests there that you've had on. Nikki Smedley from the Teletubbies. Who was that?
That was Lala.
No way, you had Lala on the... That's crazy.
Yeah. That was the first... I've got the list in front of me as well. Yeah, that was the first person that played like a character where you didn't see the person. So that was the first one where I went, can you still do the voice? And they did. So that was nice, yeah.
I've just noticed there the advert from that programme we just spoke about a wee while ago.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I know what you're on about, yes, because that's an interview with Simeon Corti. And the picture I used was him stood next to Otis the Aardvark, who was his sidekick. Simeon was actually the presenter. He wasn't the puppet. That was a guy called Dave Chapman, who hasn't been a guest on the podcast, but never say never. Yes, so that was kind of a different direction, because I not only do I want actors and stuff like that, but also the people who link the shows together. On the channels. So Simeon Corti I spoke to, and then in the current series that I'm in the middle of releasing, I had Leah Charles King on, who presented CITV for a couple of years in the early 2000s. And it was nice to hear that story of what it was like to be the person that kind of linked everything together and say, this is on now and stuff like that. That was good.
Also noticed Jamie Rickers, who was you'll probably recognise, although you don't recognise the name, Craig.
No.
He was like a CBBC presenter for quite a long time. You'll probably recognise him. That's correct. Is that correct, Jack? Just double checking.
He did both. He did both CBBC and CITV.
Okay.
He was always on weekend mornings, for about 10 years. He did a show called Up on the Roof, which was like early morning, linking between cartoons, and it was supposedly presented from on the roof of this building, or in an attic or something like that. I think if I remember rightly. And then that became a show called Toonatic, which was set in an attic, like a studio set. And again, it was between cartoons, and that went out every morning on ITV. And he did a few shows for CBBC as well.
What was his name again?
A game show called All of Them.
Jamie Vickers.
Jamie Vickers. Let me Google.
So, okay, right, we're about near the end of...
Dick and Dumb.
That's a good...
Because that was, again, that's another situation where it's like, I should have stopped watching at a point, but I didn't, because I'd started watching it.
Was it for the game Bogies, though?
Probably.
Because I remember you and Gogs...
Aye. God, that's the throwback.
That's the throwback itself, just people... you and Gogs talking about that, like, most weekends.
Yeah.
Bogies and...
Trying to play it as well. Not really having the balls to play it properly like they did, but pretending that we did if we spoke to other people, because that was solid. If you'd done it, you were like top gangster person or whatever, because you shouted Bogies.
Dick and Dom in the Bungalow was fantastic. I loved that show, and I remember watching the very last one and being really upset that it had finished. And that was about the same time I'd started secondary school, so it kind of felt like this is the point where my childhood is over. But I was a huge fan, and it appealed to my sense of humour, because if it's surreal, if it's silly, if it's got guns in it, I'm amused. And I'm quite jealous, actually, because I know some people who were on it, and funnily enough, they were way too old to, basically they were out of the age range. The story behind it being is they used to have like a talent show section where they used to have these acts on. And these guys that I know who at the time were in their late 30s, I think, they were all fans of a Saturday morning show way before our time called Tiz was. And Dick and Dom were big fans of this show as well. And they kind of ran the fan club, my friends did, for this programme. And they got chatting with the producer and said, well, why don't we go on Dick and Dom in the Bungalow and recreate one of the sketches from Tiz was? And on Tiz was, this show back in the 70s, they used to have this 10-year-old boy dress up in a rabbit suit and sing Bright Eyes, the song by Art Garfunkel. And so they went on Dick and Dom in the Bungalow dressed in rabbit suits, and sang Bright Eyes. It's like a talent show thing, and these kids were just sat there like, what? What's this? And I think they got voted off. I think if I remember right, it was a bunch of kids, and it was the series where they always had a celebrity guest on to join in with them on the show. And it was the guy who, I don't know his real name, but it was the guy who played Toad in Neighbours.
Oh, yeah.
And so they were just sat there like watching these grown-up men bounce around in rabbit costumes singing Bright Eyes, and Dick and Dom were just in awe, like, you're the guy Tiz was, and just nobody's got any idea what's going on. So that happened, and that was cool. And I hope that one day, like Ant and Dec did with bringing back SNTV for one night, and Dick and Dom one day decide just for one night, one day, just bring it back. That would be great. I would watch that. I'd love it.
The question is, like, do you think kids have changed enough to where that would still appeal, or do you think they're like the humour of kids has changed a wee bit?
It doesn't matter about the kids.
Yeah, it's about us.
It's about us. That's what I would say.
It's hard to say, actually, because I've got absolutely no idea what kids watch now. I'm really out the loop. Yeah. I think I had a look recently at like the list of shows that are on, and I didn't recognise any of them. I think the only one that I did was Tracy Beak, because that's still being shown, and they're also doing a new version of it this year as well. So I think that was the only one I recognised.
I do remember
I'm really out the loop.
I do remember they done a Danny Harper's Castle thing. That this was again when I was way too old, but I was like, oh, see what's on CITV or whatever, and no, that was BBC, I think. I don't know which one it was. Anyway, it was Danny Harper, and she was in a castle. I was like, oh, this Tracy Beaker's changed, and it wasn't the same thing. So, but it seems that some people still have an appeal somewhere, with different audiences. So maybe the same show could come back and work. And
I've noticed. I noticed on. I don't know if you've spoken about Dave Benson. I know you've spoken to Dave Benson Phillips, but I don't know if you talked about his YouTube show when he done the bit of a reunion with Pat Sharp.
Oh yeah, the documentary, the thing, That is, we did speak about that, because awesome. that was great. It was like a mockumentary, was about his life, about him, like, because there was that point where he there was like a death hoax on Facebook that meant he was out of work for a while. So this is like a mockumentary of him coming back, and I'm really pleased for him that that his career is still going from strength to strength. And what I admire is he's never stopped doing what he loves. He started out as a children's entertainer, and that's what he's still doing now. And he's more than happy to give time to his fans. So that's great. I like that. And that mockumentary with Pat Sharp and that, it was very good.
It's really nicely put together. It's like really, really funny as well.
I'm so sad that interview never worked with Dave.
Yeah, that's
because that was a great interview we had with him, and we put out that we were interviewing him. We asked for questions and stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, that's Jack even seen that as well. Jack's seen it on our Instagram.
Oh yeah. And then the interview didn't work. Like his mic had issues, and we didn't feel like it was good enough to post because of the issues. Even though we enjoyed the conversation, and now everybody thinks we're liars. But that was a super interesting conversation. What an amazing guy. He does wrestling, he does children's entertainment.
Yeah.
What a guy.
Crazy.
Amazing.
Okay, so to end, one of my favourite things on your YouTube channel, we spoke a bit in depth about it last time. We're about an hour in, so we can speak kind of in brief about this. But your video medley you put together is like a video mega mix of like 90s to 2000s TV themes. You got a lot of feedback for this because you want to talk about it?
Yeah. So I mostly do audio stuff, but I do try and do bits of video stuff. I've never been the greatest video maker, but I try and have a go when I've got time. I was looking for something to put on the channel and something that wasn't a podcast, like some other form of content. I decided to do this montage of programs that I remember, and I spent a long time on it. I wrote down everything I could remember, did a bit of research as well online to try and cover all bases, and it was supposed to be about a 20-minute video, and I went way over. It's actually 35 minutes, and it's a compilation of lots of shows from CITV, CBBC, also some off Milkshake as well. Of various programs, and what it is, it's not like the whole opening sequence. It's more like 10 seconds of each one, like bang, 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 bang. It just goes through really quick, and that's done really, really well. As of recording this, I think it's at about 700,000 views. I get a lot of comments on it. Some have been really nice. I had one person say it was like the most. What was it? The most historically significant video on the internet, or something like that. Which was, that was quite nice. And it's done really well. I think as well with the lockdown, a lot of people have probably been looking for something to take the mind off everything. So I've been getting a lot more feedback and plays and stuff since everything's kind of kicked off with the COVID situation. And that's nice. I'm happy about that. I like to bring back the memories for people, and also as well with what I do, I feel like I was the last generation that had the after school block on terrestrial television and would watch that, and this was the time when if you missed something, you missed it. There was no YouTube, there was no catch up. There was none of that. There was no Netflix. So it was a very different age. And obviously now you can watch children's programs 24 hours, and you can catch up on various services. So yeah, it has all changed. So it's nice to take people back to a time when it was a bit different.
Definitely. Well, what we'll do is when we finish up here, I'll post up some links and stuff, like your YouTube and your like podcast links and stuff, and I'll also include a link to that video you must have about 40 views that are just for me drunk. Going through like just checking these things. It's great. It's amazing. You have to watch it as well, Craig.
Cool.
It's brilliant. You'll love it. Okay, so we will let you go, Jack. Thank you for joining us. It's been much appreciated.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. It's been great. I've enjoyed it.
Excellent, man. Excellent.